Everybody, welcome to Coffee with John. Looking forward to talking with Thomas Smith, CEO and founder of skinatwork.com. Thomas, it's great to connect with you. You've been in the skincare industry for 30 years. Okay, so let's talk about that. What's changed in business? Let's just talk business for a minute, right? A lot of times people are pointing to AI is changing the world, which it is, but there's certain things that never change. In the last 30 years, what are one, two, or three things in business, you're an entrepreneur, that have not changed?
That have not changed. Particularly first of all, I'm happy to be here. So thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.
I like the new branding. Looks cool. The things that haven't changed in skincare are that skincare is replenishable. So I always say as an entrepreneur, if you can find a business that people need on a continual basis and that AI is not going to impact, because AI won't be able to help make your skin look better, you're going to be in a good position. The other thing that hasn't changed is the appetite for this category. It continues to grow despite all of the macroeconomic challenges that are out there. So that's super great. And if you can find something that you know is always going to have that kind of trajectory, I think as an entrepreneur, that's always a great place to be. And I think probably the other thing that hasn't changed in my business is the competitive nature over the years. So when I first started my career, I worked at Saks Fifth Avenue as an executive trainee, and I worked all around the building, every last part of it. And what I always found was that the people in beauty were the most courageous, the most, their business acumen was the highest. They just really were on top of their game. And if you wanted to compete in that space, you really needed to be the best and top of your field. And I love that about the category because it always challenged me to learn more, keep going, and keep improving myself. Whereas some of the other categories are great, but they just didn't have that same drive.
So you mentioned, you worked at Saks, and that just makes me think of samples, getting samples, right? As you're talking, I'm thinking of my favorite podcast, Thomas, is a podcast called Founders, and it's by a gentleman by the name of David Senra. And he has over like 410 episodes, and all he does is study founders. And he has another podcast, and most of the people on that podcast have passed away, so they're legends and founders. He also has another podcast called David Senra, which are living founders. But in Founders, what he talks about is, of all the episodes he's done, he's got a handful of favorites that he talks about, and one of his favorites is Estee Lauder. And what he talks about is that she invented the sample, right? Like hustling and going all over. I think it was Saks. I can't remember. And she found that giving samples increased sales. And so so skincare seems to be, from me looking in, a very crowded space. How important are samples in the sales process?
Samples are huge. We give them out very liberally. And any skincare brand that I've worked for has always done that. So they're usually separated into two buckets. One is a bucket of product performance that you can understand within one application. And so the sample size of that is a lot smaller. And then there are more deluxe samples where somebody really needs 3 to 4 weeks to understand the performance of a product. So that's the other bucket. Obviously a lot more expensive for us to do, but critical at all times. And the conversion rate, depending on if you do it properly, will be anywhere between 2 and 4%. And that will rival anything that you could do on digital as well. So so what we do is we bring the customer in through lead generation. And then we do have a sample, like if they don't buy right away, we do have a sample program, which is kind of unusual for a D2C brand, but we know that our conversion rate is incredibly high and our repeat rate is about 42%, which for a skincare brand is really aces.
So let's talk about that, because it seems like you're pretty dialed in, which is a great thing. The cost, I think a lot of times people aren't necessarily always thinking about, surprisingly, how much it costs to get a client and then the lifetime value of a client. So, just for the listening audience, those are two really important things that we want to know. What does it cost to get a client, and what is the lifetime value of a client? So based on the stats that you just talked about, what does it cost you to get a client, and what typically is the lifetime value of a client? Because as you're talking about replenishable, that has a longer shelf life.
Yeah, I mean, I typically don't share my metrics, but I can give you a range.
Yeah, just give a range. Yeah, you don't need to give away all your trade secrets. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was super lucky because I kind of got a digital boot camp at this company called Guthrie Ranker many years ago.
Proactive, aren't they the Proactive?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I used Proactive back in the day. It was great. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they really wrote the blueprint, I would say, with regard to DTC skincare and makeup. And so when I worked there, I was in charge of 8 brands. I had Cindy Crawford's brand. I had a bunch of different brands. And so I really did get a boot camp in LTV, lifetime value, and customer acquisition. There's 2 choices here. You can muscle your way through with brute force. And because Guthrie Ranker had and has, I'm sure, probably these days, so many resources from a financial perspective, you could really afford to push through and have a really high acquisition cost, because you knew that your LTV on a continuity program was going to be really magnificent. So I would say most skincare brands these days have an acquisition cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $75 if you're super lucky. And I think in an LTV, at least for a small guy like me, our LTV, I will divulge, is 175.
Yeah.
That's because our repeat rate is so incredibly high. But if you're churning and burning, you're going to have a hard time with that. And that's why we, like you mentioned with samples, that's why we really build loyalty, because and our model for acquisition includes LTV over a 2-year time span. And that's how we make our decisions about how much we can pay for an acquisition. Because a lot of people are just looking at a ROAS on their Meta, dashboard, and they're like, man, we're not making money. But the thing of it is you really have to consider this as a long play. You can't just look at this one snapshot in time.
Well said. Let me ask you a question. So the shelf life of the world is getting shorter. The attention spans are, less than a goldfish, many say, which is less than 7 seconds. People seem to be, with all the technology, in a rush. If someone were to go to skinatwork.com, one of the first things they see on the homepage is life is busy. Skincare shouldn't be all in one step. Okay. There's more, but I'm just kind of, saying that. So, there's this, the American way, right? We want it all in one. We want it one step, one step, da. So just talk about the evolution of that, and, the one step mindset, and why people gravitate to the one step.
Sure. So I'm always kind of fond of saying that I'm actually ironically, I'm the laziest skincare person on the planet, which is crazy, because I've, either created or developed or marketed hundreds of formulas, some of them that have sold millions and millions of pieces. So you would think that I'm like this product maven who just has a 10-step routine, but I just really have no patience for it. And that really started when I was actually working for Guthrie, because I had 8 brands and we were probably launching 4 to 5 products a year. And so I was expected to shepherd 40 to 50 new products every single year. And that was very daunting for me, because I'm a very quality, and those were quality products, but I wanted to be able to test each one of those products for 12 weeks. And that just was simply impossible to do. And concurrent to that, my party trick has always been that when people find out that I'm in skincare, man, I get cornered in the dining room or wherever it is, and people just grill me over and over again. And so what I would do is I actually created this little piece of paper that I carried around in my pocket. I would write people out, I'd ask them all the questions, write a routine, blah, 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 give them the full Monty of what they needed to do. And I would try to keep it very digestible, not too crazy, not too many steps. But inevitably, I would always get a text or a phone call 2 weeks later, and they would be like, I know you said, now, am I supposed to use the orange one before the blue one? And I just saw this new thing because, the world is proliferating like crazy with new brands. They're like, what about this new thing? Can I work that in? And I was like, oh my God, I'm feeling it. But also the market is feeling this ocean of choice. It's just literally an ocean of choice. That's too much. So I kept trying to create these hypertasking SKUs in my professional life, but every time I would get to the boardroom table, the CFO would be like, no way that cost of goods sold is going to support this huge overhead structure that we had. So that's kind of the reason why I was like, you know what, if I ever strike out on my own to do this again, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make skincare for busy/lazy people who want to get in and out of the bathroom as quickly as possible, and know that I've done all of the work for them. You don't have to play skin scientist on your face anymore. You don't have to go through the endless trial and error. This is a one and done, and it is totally super thoughtful. So you don't have to think about it.
I'm a big reader, and I often talk about how the amazing part about a book to me is you take somebody who's done 10, 20, 30 plus years of research or lived this incredible experience, and then they put it in a book, give or take, for $9.95. You can learn everything that they've done. And so there is, the lineage and the history, and your track record for you to then take it all and just kind of package it the way you did, I think is great. And so from a competitive standpoint now, how do you then message that repeatedly? People, I've heard studies, it takes 18 months for people to change their mind. They need to see things 50 to 100 times before they start to, make a decision to buy something, and those numbers range from, all over the place. And so, for you, how do you compete and message in a noisy market? Because your people that are busy are also scrolling quickly, and so how do you get their attention, and how do you compete?
You're going to be, maybe you'll find this shocking, maybe you won't. Most of our customers convert on the first visit,
right?
and that's just
it is. Why do you think that is?
I just think that we're communicating to them on a very visceral need basis, which is that they're either confused or frustrated, or our number one thing is that they're skeptical, right? They're like, because everybody who responds to, or most people that respond to Skin at Work are 40 plus. So they've either tried it all, or they're confused by it all, or whatever. And when they hear our message of hyper simplicity, they're just like, yeah, let me do that. And in most skincare brands, people will buy one product and then see if they like it, and then they'll dive deeper into the brand. We don't have that. Like almost 70% of our one visit sales are full kits, because that's how desperate people are to
simplicity.
To cut through the madness. And so that's pretty shocking. And so we do a lot of business on Meta and whatnot. And we have some cool new things coming out that are very targeted towards Gen X, because Gen X is incredibly neglected with regard to marketing. Like nobody wants to spend money on them for the thing that you just mentioned, which is that they're skeptical, they're hard to turn, all those things that we all know. But we've got some pretty interesting things coming up for Gen X.
So, couple things. So you sell simple. It's interesting. I'm a business coach, Thomas, and so I work with solopreneurs to Fortune companies, executives, managers, salespeople, etc. but I brand myself as somebody who gets people unstuck and thinking big, but also reverse engineering things to the simple, right? Because I think people complicate it. And so I think that's been very successful for me because I can do it, and for you because you've done it. And so, what does simple look like 6 months from now? Right? Is the world getting noisier where simple will actually be even more well received? In the last 3 months, we're recording this in April 2026. In the last few months, for example, Claude Coworker and has just exploded on the scene and really advanced companies in a significant way, amongst other bots, but specifically I'm hearing about Claude. And so now you're able to work 2 or 3 years in 1 year. You're actually able to be more productive. Will that lead to more quality time, more burnout? Will it lead to people craving simple more? Like, what are your thoughts?
I do believe that the message of simple is going to be around for a couple of years, for sure. I think probably the bigger thing that will impact my business is tightened budgets, because if you're on the coast right now, where I am, you're paying $6 a gallon, and so there used to be this whole thing about the lipstick effect, right? And actually, to go back to your Lauder reference, she's the Lauders are the one who coined that phrase, where in times of economic hardship, people would go buy a tiny little luxury and that would make them feel better. But the thing is that's not even the case anymore, right? People are either pushing down to mass, right? They're just buying a lot less things, or they're buying a lot cheaper things. And what they're finding out is those cheaper things won't work as well as the more expensive things. I mean, that's just a fact of life. With regard to skincare, right? You do get what you pay for, that's for sure. If you want to buy something super cheap and where they sprinkle ingredients in just so they can make a claim on the label, but it really doesn't do anything, then that fits your budget and you're happy with that, then that's super great. But if you want to buy, things that are packed and super efficacious, you will have to spend a little bit more money. And that's the crossroads for us, right? Is we're a little higher than mass, but we're 10 times more efficacious than anything that you could find in the drugstore or on Amazon. And I think budgets will drive simplicity more than simplicity drives simplicity over the next couple of years.
What's going to happen to department stores 5 years from today?
Oof.
We're seeing a lot of the large department stores, I don't have the data in front of my fingertips right now, but I've seen, some releases of, them going out of business. And what does the large department store look like in 5 years?
I mean, they're definitely facing extinction. And I have even, it's a sad thing for me to say, right? Because I was raised in the hallowed halls of Saks in the 90s when it was just, I managed cosmetics in the Fifth Avenue store, and it was just bonkers, the kind of business that we did back in the day. But I just don't know. I mean, maybe that format will be reinvented, but as it exists now, I don't know that it has a place anymore. And I can see the buyer journey from a DTC perspective with regard to Amazon. And I can just say, Amazon's killed a lot of categories. I think that this is definitely going to be one of them, unless you have a major overlap with regard to your customer journey. Whereas, I think Ulta has a major overlap with Amazon. And so I think Ulta will be just fine, right? Because those two customers, they co-shop, they go back and forth. They shop at Amazon for convenience, but they go to Ulta for discovery. So anything I think that's more synergistic with that probably will have a longer lifespan. But I just don't know that the department store model works.
Two things. One, I think Amazon, I just want to kind of say this about Amazon. They've also created a lot of opportunities and a lot of companies a lot of wealth, a lot of revenue. And I think I just want to kind of bring in that side of the story, because I think a lot of times, people talk about how Amazon has done what you're saying, but it also has done the flip. And I think there also is some ownership that as business people, we have to be able to forecast and see in front of us on where the market and the habits of the people are going. Amazon just happened to capitalize on that. And I remember I started an internet company, Thomas, when I was out of college. And I graduated college in 1995. And my brother and I and a buddy started an internet company. We did websites starting in June of 1995. We ultimately sold that company 2 years later. At the time, was the largest internet professional service firm in the world. And I don't say that to impress you or anyone, but to impress that we were very ingrained in that world. And we would go to these, California, party, meetings with all of the companies that they had acquired all over the country. And so I had a lot of conversations with people, and there was, even amongst owners of these internet companies, there was still that, what is it going to look like? Like, will people buy clothes? Will people buy things that they normally have to walk into a department store? And it seemed the law of proximity at that time seemed so far away that you would actually like, are you going to buy something that you normally need to like smell or feel or touch? Well, then the world of like returns became, really easy. And then all of a sudden people started trusting brands a little bit more. And so my question to you is, now, you can launch a company like yours today and be very, very successful, because just through your messaging and marketing, people can sense the feel and the smell of things. I think that's with a lot of products. And so, when do you think that happened? And like, what percentage of people do you think will actually need to walk into a store to buy a product 5 years from today? Not necessarily Saks, but even like you said, the drugstores. When will going in to feel something, smell something, and touch something go away at a higher level?
Yeah, I think that's I think that's a great question. Congratulations, by the way, on that.
Oh,
basically 1995.
Another lifetime ago. Yeah, seems like another lifetime ago. Yeah.
But super pioneer status. I saw some data, this is a couple years old now, from when I was working at my last corporate job, that said, at least in my category, that roughly 33% of the people in skincare and beauty prefer to discover and shop in stores only. They never buy online. 33% of the people were buying exclusively online, and that was every category, whether it was fragrances, which you're alluding to right now, which is like, how do you even understand what that's going to be like? And then there was another third of the people who go into stores to discover, but they were buying exclusively online.
Uh-huh.
And I was fascinated by the fact that it was like an even split between all of those different personas. I would imagine that the internet pie has probably grown to maybe 40% in my category. And I think it's also because of what you said earlier. Claude has gotten us so good at writing copy and so good at convincing people in a digital space that this is at least worth a try. And then lowering the hurdle of returns and all that really makes it, almost risk-free to do this thing, if you've got the time to do it. But I think the thing is, what people are doing now is, this is the calculus I make, so I don't know if it's super common, but when I say to myself, oh, I need a new pair of shoes, I could go spend 3 hours, looking at the stores, and now with no department stores, I got to go to all these individual stores, right? Whether I go to Abercrombie or whatever, and I do that calculus and say, or I could just buy 3 things online, and the amount of time it will take for me to return those things is a lot less than the time I would have to spend doing all that discovery, and I can do it very, very quick. And to your point, Amazon, if they're on Amazon, because that's the customer journey, right? You go to the brand site, you check it out, and then you immediately go to Amazon to validate price and credibility. And if it's on Amazon, probably you'll complete your sale there because you know all you got to do is go to Whole Foods to return that thing.
Yeah.
So I do see that pie growing, and I think that's how. Make no mistake, without Amazon, our business wouldn't be here today. So you make a great point, right? Especially for small businesses, because they make me credible, and that is huge.
Correct. Yeah. Why'd you decide to start your own company? I read in your bio, skincare chose me, right? And I think when you're in alignment, things kind of flow your way faster. And so, why now? You told a little bit of your story. If I was ever to, get back in the game, and this is what I would do, and what's the story behind the story of starting your own business? This particular business, yeah.
This particular business. I mean, like many people, I made this decision during the pandemic. And it was probably the worst time to make this decision because we had just come out of this massive proliferation of new brands. And so everybody would look at me and go, you know what, you're crazy for doing it right now. It's going to take so many resources, blah, blah, blah. But I was like, you know what? For me, it was always customer centric and driven by a need that I was seeing, like with my party trick or with friends and family and myself. And so I knew that no one else would probably do it this way because everybody is stuck in these COGS equations about how much a package can cost and how much a formula can cost. And so I decided really to turn that on its head, right? And make it less about the pretty packaging and more about what's inside the packaging, because these formulas are obscenely expensive. They would make a CFO's eyeballs just pop out of their head, never to return. So I knew that it had to be done differently. And that was the motivation for doing it now, because I thought, oh man, I'm in my 50s. These are my prime earnings years. Should I really make this jump? But I was like, no, people need this. And this is a real customer pain point, and I want to solve it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you understood the pain point and you listened to your gut, it sounds like. And the colors are cool. They're really, your website, it's a great orange, blue, green, looks great. Let's talk about packaging again though for a minute, because I feel like a lot of people don't talk about packaging. I just interviewed a guy who specializes in just packaging. Happy to connect you with him if you want. But and Apple has it down to a science. Their packaging is brilliant. You feel like you're in a candy store, and you don't even almost care how much you spend by the time you walk out, because the experience is great, the packaging is great. It's, to your point, they've broken it down into simple. Why is packaging so important today for the consumer? Not only upon buy, but upon constant looking at it and constant usage, and for the the next purchase.
Yeah, I mean, our Skin It Works reason for being is different than what I'm going to say now. But the thing is it's so competitive in places of discovery that if you don't have any curb appeal, I call it curb appeal, with your package, then you fail the first test, right? Yeah. You can't really even get people to hear your story if you don't necessarily look cool and you don't look disruptive. And, this is no knock on any of the current beauty stores, but when I go in there, in the old days, there used to be a product and then there would be like a little shelf talker that would tell you what the product did. Now, they can't afford that anymore. They have to make every spot of that shelf be as productive as possible. So the package is all you get, because they're all like soldiers in a row, right? And
you got to stick out
of products. And so if your package doesn't, because nobody's going to hear that story unless they look at your package and go, ooh, that looks really cool. Let me pull that up and read it and see what's in it. So if you are, and we're not competing in that space, which is also one of the reasons why I wanted to leave corporate. because it's madness. I mean, it's just madness with what's going on there. If you're not passing that first test, then you're not getting any eyeballs to the rest of what you have to offer.
Yeah.
Now, as a DTC brand, we're lucky because I can tell my story through a UGC person or an influencer, right? And they can hear what I'm about without you needing to see the package. And that's been an advantage for me because we use stock packaging and we make it look pretty, but it's just pretty enough to make you feel proud to own it, but it is not so tricked out that I'm wasting a lot of money on the packaging that I cannot spend on the goop. Yeah. And for me, the goop is king or queen. The packaging is secondary for me. So I'm a little unusual in that regard.
Okay, it's good. But you got a formula. How important is influence marketing today?
I mean, it's changed. It's certainly morphing, I would say. There's a lot of distrust with regard to that. So I think, we're really in the UGC zone and we're going to do something a little bit disruptive soon. But I think it's still important, but it's waning.
Yeah, feels like it is. Yeah, feels like it is. Sunscreen. I got to ask. I know we're not talking about it, but how important is sunscreen on the daily?
If you've got the discipline, it's super important.
Yeah,
for sure. We don't make a sunscreen yet because it's incredibly expensive to come out with. And there's a lot of category killers for sunscreen, which, you need to be ready to go and compete with them. Yeah. But sunscreen is at least something on the daily is incredibly important. I've already had, several superficial melanomas from being a Gen Xer, just because we didn't care. But I do think
didn't know, parents didn't know, didn't care. Like, it was like a different world, right? When I want to ask you a question about as we're coming to right. I mean, my parents were not helicopter. Our generation parents were not helicopter parents. They were like, see you in 10 hours type of thing. Yeah. So, which is good, maybe good and bad, but that's for another podcast. So before we get into a speed round, you've been talking about the simplicity of your products. And so somebody buys your products, a day of using them is, what's the experience?
You use our cleanser / mask in the morning. Then you use one step, which is the protagonist. That's our day serum / moisturizer. That gives you everything you need to face the day. We don't use it. We don't have a sunscreen. So if you want to do that, you need to add that on the top. I would say you need to use something that's a mineral base because that gives you the most protection. And then you go through your day and then you come home at night and we have the simplest, easiest fall into bed one step routine. So you cleanse again, and then you apply the timekeeper, which basically undoes the day. It repairs all of the damage that the environment has done to your skin and repairs it overnight. And really, so when you wake up, you're like, bam, you're ready to go and do it all over again. That's it.
All right. Quick speed round. Book that made a big impact on you.
Most recently, it's actually I have it here. It's the E-Myth Revisited.
The E-Myth should be I think there's certain books that should be mandatory for people in all schools, law school, medical school, college, even if you don't go to school, because I think you can be very successful without school. But E-Myth is up there with, in my opinion, Atomic Habits, which I think is another, those two books are solid books. Yeah.
So good. I recently reread it and I was like, man, I did it again. Right. Yeah. I tried to be Superman again instead of finding subject matter experts on that thing, blah, blah, blah. So stuff like that's a really good reminder.
Yeah, it's a great book. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received?
Oh man, I have a whole bunch of Thomasisms written down, but I would say probably the best one is you promote what you permit.
Yeah, that's a good one. Finish this sentence. One thing everybody can do in their business to get their business to simple is?
To simple. Use AI. It's
Right. Yeah, I know there's certain people out there that still don't like to use it or this and another, but it's really a must. It's really a must. It's a tool. It's not a solution. It's a tool, and people I think have to remember that it's a tool, no differently than you have an executive assistant and you have a team of people. AI should be on every org chart. Virtual assistants should be on org charts, right? There's roles and responsibilities and things that they can do, but it's an absolute must tool. Thomas, tell everybody where they can buy your products and learn a little bit about you, connect with you, whatever, commercial you want to give about yourself.
awesome. Yeah, thanks. So you can find Skin at Work at skinatwork.com. That's SKINATWORK.com. And you can also find us in Amazon. And actually, we've got some other DTC channels like QVC coming up. So we'll keep you posted there.
It's great. This is for all the listeners out there, the coffee community. We talk a lot about on this podcast, getting to simple. And getting to simple is not simple. It takes time. It takes quiet time, reflective time. It does take meetings and it takes listening to your customer. And if you're confusing them just 1 or 2 milliseconds, sometimes that's all it takes to lose a sale. So always be asking yourself, we're in a different world today than we were 2 years ago, 6 months ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. You can't just let certain messaging just sit for years on end. We always got to be kind of in front of our message. And to your point, Thomas, we need to be messaging and we need to always be backing things into simple. There's something called the curse of knowledge. And the curse of knowledge suggests that people on a scale from 1 to 10 of knowledge, 10 being the highest level of knowledge, they buy it at 2, maybe a 3. And the higher you start to go up from that 2 or 3, the quicker they disconnect and don't buy your product. So no matter how smart you are, get it to a 2 and a 3. Thanks, everybody. Thomas, this was great. I appreciate you taking time to be on the podcast. And you guys can reach and check out Thomas's product, which has 30 years of his experience wrapped into his simple formula at skinatwork.com. You can reach me at johndwoskin.com. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Thomas.
Thank you.